Hello, what's up, YouTube? Hey, Instagram. I am pumped because I've been on fire all day long with different things that we're working on and meetings we've had all day. Y'all know we are constantly moving and shaking, and there's just so much going on that I feel like every day I'm providing these quick snippet updates on what's happening in Baltimore. Because you know what they say, if they don't want you to know what they're going to put in the newspapers. So we're going to blast what's in all the newspapers, number one. But number two, I wanted to take a little bit more time and get into some of the nitty gritty. Okay. There's so much happening. There's so much happening. And so once you get to a certain level when it comes to investing in real estate and transitioning more into development, you understand how important and really critical policy is, whether from like a city level or the state level. And so we've been involved in so many different conversations that for me, what's always been really, really important is to make sure that we are sharing as much as we can, because not everyone has the benefit of having the seat at that table. Not all of us have, an uncle or multi-generations who have been investing in real estate forever that can put you on, right? And so my goal is to be that girl, right? Whether that's on Instagram or YouTube. And more importantly, right, for me, being able to actually be hands-on supportive for the folks in our Next Gen Accelerator program, where folks are buying up Baltimore right alongside us. So what I wanted to do today is multifold. So one, I want to, and first, shout out to those of you who are on YouTube. Please do the poll. So the poll right there is just to kind of give me an idea of who's in the room. Also, interact with me in the chat because I like to have a good time. So make sure you're chatting me up there. Say what's up as you're joining in on YouTube. Make sure you bang that like button, the thumbs up. I'm not on here all the time, but I know that is part of the rules. Okay. So make sure you're doing that. And then those of you who are on Instagram, same thing, put a 1 in the chat if you've already started investing in Baltimore. Put a 2 in the chat if it's part of your goals. 1 in the chat if you're already investing, 2 in the chat if you're part of your goals. So I wanted to start this off by talking about 2022. So we're going to do a quick market review on what has transpired in Baltimore during 2022. So let's kind of talk macro, right? During 2022 is when interest rates started to rise. So we've all been having a party in real estate across the country. Boom. We vibing, right? Because there was tons of money. Crypto's going crazy. The stock market's going crazy. The real estate market's going crazy. Interest rates are low, right? Everybody was positioned to win if you knew what you were doing and you're ready to take the right steps. But it's been a field day. And so what happened in 2022 was interest rates started to rise, and therefore we saw a shift in how many people were actively looking to buy. That changes a lot of different things. The cost as an investor, the cost of the money you go after to get. And so it slowed things down. And so I want to be really clear about what that looked like in Baltimore specifically, because just like everybody else, it happened here, right? So 2022 market stats. So really important things to note overall in Baltimore City. One, the total value of sales. So last year, in 2021, the total value of sales, everyone was really excited because they hit a new record and we were over $2 billion, right? In 2022, we were still over $2 billion. So $2.37 billion worth of sales in Baltimore City. Now, what's important is what does that mean year over year, and what does that mean from a trend perspective? So remember, I have an economics degree. I'm all about these numbers, but I'm gonna break it down in a way that you can understand, right? So year over year, so 2021 versus 2022, total value of sales was down 10%. So all of the properties that were bought, the cost of those properties overall added up, right, is down 10% from 2021 to 2022. Got it? Now, if you look from a trend perspective over the last 3 years, we're still up by 17%. So if you compare it to where we were pre-COVID, we're up 17% over the last 3 years. The number of sales, how many actual properties were purchased in 2022 was less than 10,000, and we were down about 16% year over year. So 2021 had 16% more houses purchased, the number of houses, and we're down 3% year over year for the number of houses sold, right? So we saw in 22 a slowdown of the market, of the number of properties being purchased in Baltimore. Numbers are numbers. That's what it said, right? What did Mayor Brandon Scott say today? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Okay, it's slowing down. So, so the third piece, and this to me, the next two data points are probably some of the most telling, right? Sales price, the median sales price in 2022 overall was $215,000. $215,000. That is up 8% year over year and up 24% over the last 3 years. So that means that regardless of everything else that is happening, cost of property in Baltimore has increased 24% over the last 3 years and 8% over since 2021, right? So layman's term, right? The floor has risen, right? The floor has risen. The cost of properties in Baltimore have increased by almost 25% since COVID, period, across the board, across the entire city. All right. The other data point that I think is really important is although there's less houses being sold, right? Property values are up. The average days on market are still 31 days. And I don't care where you are across the country, 31 days is not bad for an average days on market. We're still average days on market at 31 days, which is the same as it was in 2021. So the people who are buying just as, you know what I'm saying? They're moving with just the same amount of vigor, the same as 2021. And days on market is down 31% over the last 3 years, which is a good thing, right? It means that properties are selling faster in Baltimore than they were 3 years ago, about 30% faster. All right. Got it. Y'all following? Drop a one in the chat if you following. I didn't know y'all tapped in because I know we don't always do numbers. Y'all don't sit in classrooms all day, most of you. So I'm trying to keep it spicy, okay? But I want to make sure y'all following. All right, cool. We out. Let's go. So where are we seeing the biggest impacts, right? Where are we seeing those biggest impacts? The biggest impacts when it comes to the increase in pricing are coming from two specific market areas. Drum roll, please. Boom. This happening in what Live Baltimore, one of our nonprofits that we are partners with, what they call the lower middle market and distress markets. What Charm City buyers finna call it today is the areas that tend to have the most vacants, right? Around the way. The neighborhoods that, kind of, they hood adjacent. If you're in the lower middle market, if you're distressed, it might be in the hood, okay? So we're talking about the areas and neighborhoods that have the highest concentration of vacant properties are pushing the data for the entire city, because in the lower middle market, the average price of properties is $150,000, which is an increase of 15% year over year. So up 15% from 2021 to 2022 and up 40% over the last 3 years. Okay, so that means in this area, in these same neighborhoods, you might have bought a house for $80,000, $90,000, and that same house today is $150,000. In the distress market, so markets that are going to have the absolute highest concentration of vacants, year over year, 2021 versus 2022, the average price has increased by 30%, and the average property value in that market is now $78,000. 3 years ago, the cost of those properties would have been 103% less. It's increased 103%. So it's more than doubled. So you used to be able to buy a property in the distress market on average for about 40 grand. That same house 3 years later is $80,000. Why is this important? It's important because for multi reasons. One, let's be very clear because we always want to talk about why and talk about the beginning, right? Baltimore is the birthplace of redlining, point blank in the period. Baltimore is the birthplace of redlining. And so what that means is, as investors and as developers, we have to know and understand a few things. One, we need to know and understand why Baltimore is block to block and how that was kind of created. But we also have to know and understand why there's so much, why there's a tale of two cities, why there's houses that you can buy for over $1 million 3 blocks from a house that you could barely get 120,000 for. It's important that you understand the foundation of those things, right? And then on the flip side, when it comes to development, growth, and raising the bar and shifting things and, eradicating vacants and all of that, you have to make sure that you are making decisions and moving in a way that does not perpetuate the issues that folks have with gentrification. So what is gentrification? Gentrification is raising the standards of a neighborhood, of an area to quote unquote middle class. Right? Y'all know what I say. We can fight about what that means all day, right? A lot of times it means Starbucks, but what have you, okay? We can argue about what that means all day, but at the bottom line is displacement does not need to be part of the process of development or raising the standards of a neighborhood to middle class. We all like to feel comfortable walking our dogs outside, right? We all like to have and be in neighborhoods that, wow, surprise, you have trash cans on the corner so that you don't have litter all over your neighborhoods. We all want similar things, right? We might like to ride our bikes and have bike lanes too. We sure as heck want fresh food and grocery stores and want to make sure that we have access to the things that folks need to survive, right? No questions there. The piece that's really important is around displacement, right? How do we make sure that that Auntie Mabel who lives in this distressed neighborhood and remembers when it was full of residents, watched it become completely vacant, and then when folks come into her neighborhood, now she can no longer afford to live in her neighborhood and moves. Or Auntie Mabel paid off the house, passed away, left a free and clear home to her children, who then sold the property to the first person who sent them a letter or a text message. Let's talk about it, right? So there's a lot of different things that have to happen as all of these different pieces are moving and shaking, right? So we need to have investment, right? We need to be able to invest in these neighborhoods that have been overlooked and disinvested for decades. We need to be able to turn these vacant houses into homes. We need to be able to do all those things, right? And the truth of the matter is investing in these neighborhoods is going to raise the property values, but there's things that have to happen in the background. So we're not repeating mistakes of other cities or challenges that other cities found trying to do the right thing. So like when DC really started their process of development and shifting their city, that happened in the 80s, and it was done with clear intentions, right? I don't know that they fully understood what the impacts were going to be, right? So yes, absolutely. This is all about thriving, right? We're not here to survive. We're here to thrive. And honestly, that's kind of the next point, because everyone gets mad at me if I talk about development, I talk about Baltimore, I talk about opportunity, I talk about how excited I am, and I don't talk about crime. And the reason why I don't is because I know and understand how integrated crime is with vacancy issues, with educational issues, right? With access to transportation to get to jobs. All of those things really matter. And so a lot of times people are out here trying to survive and not positioned to thrive, right? If you're hungry, you're going to figure out how to eat, point blank in the period. And to be honest, most of the neighborhoods that actually have issues with crime also don't have access to apples, oranges, and lettuce, right? Ain't no grocery stores. It's in a food desert, right? So people are in positions where they have to survive rather than thrive. So being able to eradicate vacants becomes one of the pieces to the puzzle to turning those types of things around. Cool? Y'all with me? All right, let's rock. So Lower middle market, average property value is $150,000. Distressed market, $78,000. Then you get into the luxury market. Let's start at the top, right? The expensive neighborhoods. The luxury market, these are neighborhoods like Roland Park, Federal Hill, Fells Point, Bolton Hill, Mount Washington. Those types of neighborhoods, the median price is about $400,000. Remember, median means middle, not average. That means half the houses might be less, half the houses are more, but the median is $400,000. The competitive market, which is like Hamden, Canton, Patterson Park, those are averaging about $310,000. And then the upper middle market, this is your Reservoir Hills, your Belvederes, your Greek towns, their median price is $230,000. All right. Now, let's get into the good stuff. Vacant properties. I just rolled my shirt. Vacant properties. There are 14,663 vacant properties. Drop VBN in the chat. VBN, vacant building notices. Because again, people say words and don't know what they actually mean. Also on YouTube, if you're watching YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for me. All right. There are 14,663 vacant properties in Baltimore. So those 14,663 vacant properties, these are properties that have vacant building notices, VBN, vacant building notices. That means that the city has sent a notice to the owner to say, hey, your property is vacant. You need to get a use and occupancy certificate. Okay? You need to get a use and occupancy certificate in order to have someone move into this home. This is when you start getting, citations, fines, those types of things, because the city considers your property as vacant. No one can move into a house that has a vacant building notice until there's a use and occupancy certificate. Quick sidebar. If you're buying a rental property or even buying a house to live in, you should be checking or asking your agent to check or whatever if there is a vacant building notice on the property. Because if there is, in order for someone to move in, you need a use and occupancy certificate, which will likely require renovation. If it's a full rehab with a vacant building notice, you having a problem. Okay, that is a problem. But let me get back to these notes before I get on to a whole nother ballgame. So we have 14,663 vacant properties. What is the percentage of those properties that the city owns? Tell me in the chat. What percent of those 14,663 properties, houses with vacant building notices, how many do you think the city owns? Okay, we got 50%, we got 10%, 60%. How many? 70%. How many? 20%. How many properties out of 14,663 vacant properties with a vacant building notice does the city own? 0. 90%, 35%, all of them, 50%, 100%, 30, 35, 25, 7.6%. 7.6% as of September of 2022. As of September 2022, Baltimore City owns and controls 1,116 vacant properties. I'm going to let that simmer. I'm going to let that simmer. They own 7.6% of the 14,663 vacant properties. Got it? So that means that 92% are privately or individually owned, whether that's by LLC, whether that's by nonprofit, whether that is Auntie Mabel, probate issues, whatever. Baltimore City has 7.6%. Okay? Now, what is the issue? right? What are the issues that these vacant buildings cause, right? Obviously, we talked about crime, right? People need to survive rather than thrive. You have these situations where it's suppressing the property values. Properties can't increase and appreciate because there's too many vacant properties. It causes issues with appraisals. It causes issues with next door properties, and now you're taking water in because your vacant house next door don't have a roof, and now your basement's flooded, right? You have all of these different issues, which then creates a loss of wealth because this is a black city. So the people who owned these houses and lived in them 30 years ago were probably black folk, right? Probably black folks. So when you're passing those properties down, they don't have the value. The cost of renovation is high, and there's vacants all around, right? People release those properties, sell them, and now they're going back into the loop of privately owned vacant properties with investors who did not join the next gen accelerator and therefore don't know how to get them done. Okay. All right. So in addition to that, right, the city only controlling 7.6% of those properties means that those other 92% or whatever it is cost the city about $200 million per year. $200 million per year to maintenance, manage, deal with the crap, loss of income, all that kind of stuff. $200 million per year. So we have this, we know the problem, right? There's a lot of vacant properties. Property values don't always support in all of these neighborhoods, right? So if the average property value in a distressed market, an area that has primarily vacants, is $78,000, and the cost of construction on a 2-story home is like blighted, and I mean like front wall with a tree growing up the middle, a Charm City Buyers type property, you're spending way more than that, almost twice that, sometimes more, to do your renovation. So you have this situation where the properties are upside down. So, and I don't want to jump too far, right? But for everyone that talks about and wants to DM and ask about dollar houses, you have to know and understand that there are properties, lots of properties in this city that I would not buy for $1. Please write this in the chat. Cheap sometimes means expensive. Right? Just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's not going to be expensive. So there are properties that I could probably get for $1 when, if I'm doing a straight transaction, if I'm buying it for $1, doing a renovation and putting it on the market, I will lose tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes more, right? Cheap sometimes means expensive. If you've been following us for a long time, you know doggone well, if you get excited with me about a $5,000 house without a clear analysis, I'm going to get in that. I don't know if YouTube allows you to cuss, but I'm going to jump in there. Cheap sometimes means expensive. And that is the case in Baltimore as well, which is why you have to know and understand how to navigate the market, where to buy, and how to analyze your deals. Okay? You get what you pay for. Y'all know that. You get what you pay for. Watch out for them auction things. You Google something real quick. All of a sudden, you have all these auctioneers with cheap houses. Please make sure that you hear my voice in the back of your head to make sure you're running numbers. Cheap sometimes means expensive. Yes, exactly. I'm going to get all up in there. Okay? I'll get all up in there. What is needed if you get a VBN? You need a use and occupancy certificate. You need a certificate from the city that says that the property is certified to be occupied. The only way you do that is by pulling permits and doing construction, doing the work. All right? Okay. Moving right along, because I have a list of stuff, but y'all know I be getting off track, which is why I got my little notes here. Okay. So in the areas, the other thing about these areas where the cost of construction supersedes your property value, you have investors who are buying with cash. You don't have to worry about refinancing out, paying off lenders, things like that, who can afford to be underwater for a while, knowing what's coming and happening, right? Which creates a situation where, one, They buy up too much. They underestimate how much construction and the process is going to be. And really, in my opinion, can result in slumlord issues. But we have hedge funds and investors who are buying up cash here because they can buy 10 houses for the price of one in another market, and they're willing to wait, right? They're willing to pay attention to what's happening around and nearby and just hold on tight and ride the wave for a couple years until somebody else does the work to raise the property values. Okay. All right. So we have these buyers who are coming in, hedge funds, whomever, coming in and buying up houses and throwing folks in them and just waiting. Got it. Cool. Now let's talk about population decline real quick. And I promise I'm going to do a Q&A at the end too, because we have some time. So population decline. So Baltimore used to be a million person city. Baltimore used to be a million person city. We've been hovering around 500 and some odd thousand for the last couple of years. The conversation has been around population decline, right? People are leaving the city. Now, as someone who has a degree in economics, and for someone who just don't be trusting these people, right? I'm going to watch what you do and not what you say. Let's dig into what that data is actually telling us. When you really dive into the data, the population decline, there are folks who are like, who's actually leaving? Well, who's leaving are families, people who are having children. So you're comparing number of people leaving the city versus like households and things like that. Like I would love to see some really, really good household growth or decline data to really be able to have this conversation. But the people who are moving out of the city into nearby counties tend to have children. Why? Because there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the school systems, and not everyone can either afford private independent schools or don't understand how to go through the process, because those schools definitely stroke them checks for scholarships. There are amazing organizations also that provide scholarships to go to independent schools. There are magnet schools and charter schools and all these other things, but I have a child, right? I know how it feels to be like, do I want to send them to a public school or not? I get it. So the data says that people who are leaving the city are families with children. Who's populating the city? The people who are populating the city are folks who are here from DC, Philadelphia, New York, who are commuting or work from home or whatever. Folks who work at hospitals. So we have doctors and nurses and all of these things. We're having this shift where if you talk about population decline without talking about the fact that these one bedrooms in Harbor East and Brewers Hill are $2,000 a month, these studio apartments are $2,000 a month, and they're getting rented up, you're missing the conversation, right? There's definitely a shift happening, but what this shift can easily create is this even more prevalent have and have not issue, right? Where we have folks who have a lot of money coming into the city and we have folks who ain't got none. And there's not much to bridge the gap if we're not paying attention, right? All these new luxury apartment buildings. Exactly. Who's moving in? So we got, it's the doctors, it's the lawyers, it's the financial folks. It is people who work and who are living in Baltimore and getting that check from DC, right? There are I love saying this because it's so interesting to me every single time I'm in the area. The entire neighborhood of Brewers Hill was created, in my opinion, in the last 3 years. And it's full of luxury apartment buildings, Target, Starbucks. There's literally a spot where you can have a happy hour for your dog. It's a dog happy hour place, okay? The money's here. And it really never left. It's just how are these narratives created and who's telling it to you and what do they have to gain from it, to be honest. Right? So someone said households are up, for the last census by about 1%, but it's population number of residents that decline. That's exactly my point, right? If we look at number of people, yes, it's decline, but it's the parents and the kids that are throwing the things off. But whatever, people want to fight with me about that all day long. Whatever. So girl, dog happy. It's like, I'm not playing. They're not sponsored, so I ain't gonna shout them out. But all right, so those areas, and people are like, well, where are they living in these luxury spots? So these are the apartment buildings that were thrown up in Harbor East, Brewers Hill, down in the Inner Harbor, Fells Point, Understand and Believe, the Baltimore Peninsula or whatever, right? Port Covington. The properties that are going to be put up there are going to follow suit. It's expensive. It's super expensive, and it's not having an issue, right? So let's just be very clear about population decline. Let's be very clear about who's here, and let's be very clear about the conversation blanketing Baltimore all at once, because they don't call the tale two cities for nothing. All right, cool. Hey, okay. So what are the solutions, right? What's happening right now to help offset a lot of these challenges? What is happening right now to make sure that we continue to move the city forward, turn these vacant houses into homes? How do we make sure that these neighborhoods aren't being left behind, the people who are of and from the neighborhoods? How do we do all of these things? So first, let's go back. 2022, Mayor Brandon Scott announced he was putting $100 million towards eradicating vacants. So $100 million was set forth to develop 1,000 vacant properties per year. So there's been a lot of conversations about that, a lot happening within the DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, a lot of conversation with the mayor's office and the administration, a lot of conversation with different organizations, nonprofits that are doing a lot of stuff. Again, right, we've done the work to have a seat at a lot of those different tables, which is helpful because we can help craft solutions. But somebody got to stroke some checks, right? Because some of these properties are underwater. So we have $100 million from Mayor Scott. There is a bill sponsored in the state. It was called the Appraisal Gap Bill. They changed the name, but I'm gonna call you what your mama call you, right? One of those types of things. Like, just because you changed your name, just like Port Covington, it's the Baltimore Peninsula now, but it's Port Covington, no shade to nobody. But it was called the Appraisal Gap Bill. And so what the Appraisal Gap Bill originally was designed to do was to go into these low-income census tracts and turn these properties that were upside down, right side up. So basically the state would step in to fill the gap. So when the cost of your construction supersedes the cost of, or the value of your property, the state would step in with a grant to be able to make those things happen. So you should know that Baltimore City has tons of grants and incentives for home buyers, people who are buying property to live in it, but not nearly as many for smaller developers, onesie, twosie houses, grants provided for them. So this Appraisal Gap Bill, which has since been renamed, but it's not in my head because I'm gonna call you what your mama called you, that is has been approved and just needs to be funded. So that's really, really exciting for us, and something we've been talking about with our Next Gen Accelerator folks for quite some time. Another thing that the city has been doing is it's called REM. It's the REM process. So it's like in lieu of in REM foreclosure process. So what the REM process does, for those of you, put a one in the chat if you've used or heard of OHAT, One House at a Time. Put a one in the chat if you've heard of OHAT, One House at a Time. So OHAT is the auctioneer that the city uses. So they're contracted with the city to basically, it's a disposition process. So what the city does is they put a property through receivership, which means the property has been vacant and blighted. The owner hasn't done anything. They can't do anything, haven't done anything. And so they take them through a court process. The city takes the property back and auctions it off through one house at a time. What one house at a time does is about quarterly, they have an auction that is public. They did them online during COVID for obvious reasons. It used to be, in a closed room in the northern part of Baltimore. But basically, OHAT would auction these properties that the city took back and put them back in the hands of investors with the expectation that the investors renovate the property within 12 months. The challenge with OHAT is one, and this is no shade to OHAT. I always try to say what I think without getting in trouble. So no shade to OHAT, but the challenge is the application process is pretty simple to navigate. And there's not a ton of accountability when it comes to actually getting the project done. And when it was online, you could be sitting comfortably in California and New York and bid up the property something crazy without knowing or understanding anything about the city, and realize afterwards that you paid $100,000 too much. And that is a specific example because I've seen that, and can't do anything with it. So it's just perpetuating the issue. So his mama called him Clay, so I'm gonna call him Clay. It's the appraisal gap bill and Port Covington. So anyway, what the REM process does is if a property has liens, so property taxes, water bills, environmental fines, etc., that the value of those liens supersede the assessed value of the property. So how much the city says and the state said the property is worth from a tax perspective, the city can foreclose directly versus going through OHAT and receivership and all of that. They can foreclose on the property through those liens. So what that does is gives the city an opportunity to focus on block-to-block solutions to vacancy problems versus having these long, drawn-out issues. So they can say, we're going to focus on these blocks. We're going to get control of as many vacants as possible so that the percent of what the city has control of can increase, number one, right? Because they only have control of what percent of vacant properties? Who paying attention, taking notes? The city has control of what percent of vacant properties? Properties with vacant building notices? Pop quiz. Thank you. 7.6%. So by doing this, they can speed up the process, get control of properties faster, and with receivership, they have no control over who does the work. So the city would be able to better control what's happening with these properties if they're able to go through this REM process. So they've started it. It's a newer process. You can even submit to the city addresses of properties that you think should go through the REM process, which is really great. But it is a new policy, but it's active. The lawyers for the city are working through it right now. But what it does is foreclose on properties where liens supersede the assessed value of the home. Side note, those of you who are like wholesalers and stuff like that, have been doing it in Baltimore for a while. It's not hard to find properties where their liens supersede the value of the property, where you can't get this property sold because the liens are way too high. Nobody's finna pay that. That's crazy, right? We still have to do rehab. Once we pay off all the liens, the house is worth negative, right? YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. So REM is the new city foreclosure process for properties that have liens that supersede the assessed value of the house. Okay, so REM helps to give city more control of the properties so that they can also get the properties into the hands of developers or whomever to be able to actually get the projects done without needing to go through the full receivership process, which also costs a lot of money. You have attorneys and you're going back and forth with folks forever, is what it feels like. So this is supposed to speed up the process. Okay, I'm gonna get to that. I know about that bill. We're gonna talk about that in a second. Those of you who have questions, I'm all over the place. So let me I'm gonna circle back around. So there is also a proposal. There's a few proposals, but there's a proposal about finding vacant properties more. So if your property is vacant and you have somebody calling 311 to say, yo, this house, there's no boards on it, there's a lot of crime happening, people are coming in and out, there's all these issues. Because remember, we had 3 firefighters unfortunately lose their lives last year in a vacant house that collapsed, that caught on fire, likely because there were folks coming in and out of the house. Like, a lot of times these houses become epicenters for drag activity, crime, and things like that. And so finding the owners of these vacant houses, if they're nuisance properties, above and beyond having environmental fines, not only hits people where their pockets are, but it also helps, and this is kind of my assessment, push properties over the edge so that they can qualify for REM, where those liens are going to supersede those assessed values. So if you have properties or you're buying vacant properties and you don't know what you're finna do with it, get it together, because it's going to cost you a lot of money to deal with those fines. And the city is fully ready and prepared to take that junk back if you don't get yourself together. Quick plug, Next Gen Accelerator. That's all what we're about, making sure people know and understand how to navigate Baltimore and find success in their real estate goals in the city. So we have the vacant fine policy that's happening. We have a proposal that is just about ready for community feedback, where the city is basically trying to streamline the process with like vacant to value type properties. And so what they're trying to do is create fixed pricing models. So rather than trying to bid or create an auction around these properties, there's a fixed price based on the purchaser type. So if you are a for-profit developer buying a property, then you'd pay $3,000 for a house versus a nonprofit that's trying to buy the property and you pay $1,000. And if you are a city resident, a community member, you may be able to get a property for the city for what? $1. Y'all love this dollar conversation. We can get the property from the city for $1. So there's a whole chart mapping out how much you pay based on who you are. So that will cut down on taking those bids and going back and forth and all those types of things. It means that the Board of Estimates would pre-approve selling properties, so you don't have to wait for some meeting to pop up where you can be on the agenda and not get kicked off because other more important things are going on. And it would cut down the time period from bid to ready to sign a PSA, a purchase and sales agreement, from 180 days to 90 days. Now, this process is cool, right? Nobody's going to front on, saving time and energy and all that good stuff, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be faster to clear those liens and stuff. So it doesn't mean that you'll get the property possession in 90 days, but it does mean that the city is working on a process to keep the things moving along faster. So not only is the city trying to get control of more properties, they're also trying to make sure that it doesn't take them as long to get them in somebody else's hands. Right? So they're not sitting on vacant properties, but getting them into the hands of folks who can actually get them done. What does REM stand for? I did not write that down. Actually, you know what? Let me tell you what it stands for. I closed that window. 2 seconds. So it's called judicial in REM is the full name of the process. And honestly, REM, I think REM's a legal term. It doesn't REM. It's not like REM, like it stands for something. But the policy or the process is called judicial in REM. So judicial in REM foreclosure. And that will allow Baltimore City Department of Housing to foreclose on the liens on a vacant lot or building where the value of the liens exceeds assessed value of the property and thereby take title to the property. Yep. So how is REM being funded? REM, so they're taking possession of the house based on the fact that the person owning the house owes them money. So just like a bank can foreclose on you if you don't pay your mortgage, That's kind of a way to think of the judicial and rem process. The city is taking the property back because you owe them money. But Department of Housing is who is footing the bill from an operational perspective and legal team and all that good stuff. Yep. Cool. Now there's there's tons of other things going on. But those are a few of the ones that I wanted to highlight. And I knew that this question was going to pop up. So will the House bill pass that bans wholesaling in Baltimore? So there is a bill that was created by a delegate in the House that basically says that you can't wholesale properties. You need to have a real estate license. Do I think it'll pass? No, I don't think it'll pass, but I do think it's important to know and understand what's happening. So it's basically the NAR, right, is probably really involved in this bill, the National Association of Realtors. But it would require someone who is involved in the purchase and sale of real estate in some way, shape, or form to have a real estate license, which would essentially mean that wholesaling would not be allowed in the state because it is a state bill. I don't know that it'll pass. I don't know that it has a lot of support. I have talked to folks in the state to get their thoughts and feedback. Looking forward to having more specific conversations. But no, I don't think it's going to pass. The other thing that is in that bill, if you actually read it, I believe it's number 7 in that bill, also limits how many properties somebody can buy within a year if they don't have a real estate license. And like, honestly, if they wanted it to pass, I don't even know why they would have that in there, because you can't. If the goal is eradicate vacancies, the goal is to do all these things, which obviously this is a state bill, not just about Baltimore City, but Baltimore City is the lifeblood of the state. It's very freaking hard to do that if you can't buy more than 2 properties a year. So no, I don't think it's going to leave the House floor. I don't think it's going to leave the House floor, let alone be able to do anything in the Senate. So yes. So absolutely. So wholesaling. So let me break down wholesaling and why this bill is even like a conversation. The problem is, so one, over 90% of the properties with vacant building notices are privately held. What wholesaling does is they do the work that the city essentially doesn't necessarily have the capacity to do, which is go after 15,000 people and try to get them to sell their house. So they create movement in a market where otherwise there may not be any movement. However, what wholesalers are doing and have been doing is it's just messing up for everybody, right? So you have these wholesalers who are targeting these Black neighborhoods, which, it's not about race, but it's about wealth. So when you have wholesalers going after properties that have people living in the house, older folks, sometimes taking advantage, right, of a lack of awareness of what's happening around them, the value of their property. I get wholesalers, everybody got to get their money, but it's the predatory actions that are causing a lot of problems. That's one. And number 2 is the greed, right? So then what you have on the other side is folks who are then flipping and selling those properties to people in California, New York, everywhere else, where they get really excited because they're buying this house for $90,000, not knowing that it's barely worth $20 because the cost of renovation is going to be $250,000, right? So the challenge and the issue is that people aren't educated on Baltimore, right? And really knowing how to run numbers and do stuff well and do it right. And, people just like watching a couple YouTubes, going on Bigger Pockets and sending out contracts. So no shade, but like it is what it is. And so it's that. So then you have community members who are pissed because they're getting calls, texts, and letters every single day trying to get them to sell when wasn't nobody checking for their neighborhood 2-3 years ago. And the numbers and the offers and stuff that are getting are so low that it's becoming predatory. And then you have kind of the issue of, well, do all the community members understand what their property's worth and how much construction is and all that kind of stuff? It's a whole nother conversation. Clearly, I've been around the block a couple times. I've had these conversations. I've gotten stuff under contract. I've done wholesale deals in the past. I don't do them quite anymore because I don't really have time for it. But yeah, so that's basically what has driven the bill. Not to mention the fact that, you eating somebody else's lunch, right? So they want you to have a real estate license because it's the National Association of Realtors that's really helping to push that bill. Point blank in the period. Okay. Okay. So you said they could still move the homes with the license. Yeah, but they don't want a license. Like the license, as you know, Amanda, is going to require more stuff, right? You are held to a different standard with a license. And sometimes those standards can be contradictory with what you're doing as a wholesaler. So I'm like, it's, yeah. So, I'm pretty balanced. I've done wholesaling and I've had a license. So, this is why they should require all wholesalers to get a license so they can't keep getting away with doing shady stuff. I think what's important is that folks are held accountable, and that folks know what they're doing. Like this is me wearing like rosy glasses, right? Because everyone's not going to care about how they do stuff to the level that I do, right? To be able to balance the dollars and the dollars needing to make sense. I like my nice stuff. I like my designer, whatever. I like to fly first class. I like those things, and that's okay. But I can do that without hurting my community. I can do that without hurting people. Not everyone has that same mentality. And sometimes folks don't know that they're actually hurting someone. So I get that. But we have to do better. We just have to do better. And so for me, the way I take my own personal part in that is by educating folks on like, do better. Do better. Wholesaling is about more than whatever it is that you find on YouTube, because it has a bigger impact. So understanding what those impacts are really, really important. Okay. Illinois pastor, yeah, that wholesalers can only sell one. Yeah, so this isn't new. Philadelphia has restrictions around wholesaling as well. So it's not a new conversation. I just don't know that the way it was written is like all the way there, and I don't think it'll have the support in the House, and therefore not make it to the Senate. Okay. No, absolutely. I care about the impact. Not everyone does. That is 100% fact. That is 100% fact. And to be honest, it wouldn't be the first time for me to call out a wholesaler for being full of crap. All right, let's do some questions real quick. Yep, that's very true too. A license will not keep people from being shady. There's some other questions that I saw in the chat earlier that I wanted to come back to, but I did want to do kind of a state of the market, what's going on, what's moving and shaking. For those of you who are currently selling property, right? You were riding the wave, you was doing a renovation, interest rates shifted underneath you, and you still got to get rid of your property. Make sure you are looking at your pricing. Pricing is important. Make sure you're looking to see what your property is eligible for, whether that is the Vacant's the Value Booster Grant, whether that's live near where you work, right? Those types of grants. Make sure you know and understand what incentives are out there for potential buyers, so that you are you're differentiating your property. But the best thing to do is know what you're doing before you buy the property, so that you're setting things up on the front end. Because I think the properties that are positioned to still move and win in this market have tax credits, property tax credits to keep those costs low, have Vacant's the Value Booster Grants, have live near where you work. They have all these different types of grants associated with them and tax credits, so that the affordability is there. So you're offsetting the increase in interest rates, which raises the monthly cost of these properties, with all these tax credits and incentives. so that you're able to still find that happy medium, before the impacts of the increase in interest rates. I got a couple questions about how do you get rid of a vacant building notice? You have to get a use and occupancy certificate. To get a use and occupancy certificate, you need to pull some permits. If you're pulling permits, that means you need to do some construction. If you have a house that's completely renovated and has a vacant building notice, you are going to, what you should probably do is try to get a UNO, like pull a use and occupancy permit, have them come out and then do like a consultation and tell you what you need to do. Do not be surprised if they tell you need to open up walls, because I've seen it plenty of time before, which again is why we're like, here's what you need to know, because the more people get into properties, fail, and get stuck, the more we have these vacant properties sitting on the market, and the city only owns 7.6% of them. So the more education we can have for people who want to play in this sandbox, the better, so that folks know and understand how to get in well and don't get distracted by the cheap houses, not understanding the full market. Okay? You're welcome. All right. Yeah, absolutely. It's a miseducation of the strategy of wholesaling, over marketing the concept. 1,000%. I am actually of the school of thought that the best wholesalers have done housing. Like, they've done their own properties, done their own rehab, have been investors. Whereas it's marketed as a easy way to get into investing, and that's ease, right? Shouldn't necessarily be the goal. And it's not even easy, to be honest. So there is a little bit of a science to it. In your opinion, is a FHA 203K loan sufficient to rehab a property in Baltimore? Yeah, absolutely. You can use 203Ks in Baltimore for sure. I think it's a really great way to get in on properties where you might be paying a little bit more on the purchase price, but you have the lower interest rates. Like, you can compete with investors in ways that traditional buyers can't, and you can pay more than investors can. So it's a really nice sweet spot. The challenge that you tend to have with a 203K is finding a contractor that's going to work with you, because your contractor needs to have the financial ability to carry the project, because a lot of times the contractor has to front the work. So the challenge is finding a contractor that can do that, and the contractors that do that are going to tax. Your rehab's going to be more expensive. If you and I were doing the same project, I as an investor and you as a 2-3K buyer, I'm going to pay less on the rehab, because that contractor is going to charge you, right, for needing to hold that and front that work, and for the operational costs of managing through the project. So as long as you know and understand that, you should be fine. And with a 203K, you get access to more than 100% of the after repair value. So you're able to spend a little bit more. I would also make sure that you're prepared and ready to ride that out, right? So if that means if you're paying 110% when you do your acquisition and your rehab, so it's 110% of the after repair value of the property, you're going to need to hold that property to make that equity back. So you should have a long-term strategy, is what I'm saying, if you're using a 203K. But yes, 203K is definitely working Baltimore 100%. Can you join Next Gen Accelerator if you're not a resident? I'm not in it just for the money. I'm an impact investor. Absolutely. So we have folks all over the country and even outside of the country in our Next Gen Accelerator. So you can absolutely join not being here. The classes during the week, we have live sessions, usually at least 3 times a week. So 3 to 4 times a week, there are lives. The least you'll have in a week is 2. And all those sessions throughout the week are virtual. We do have opportunities where we'll get together, whether informally or we'll have live events where Next Gen can obviously pull up. But no, not most people, but a good percentage of folks are outside of Baltimore City, and also outside the state. How do you do your ARV with numbers 6 months ago were inflated? Really great question. So actually right now we're in a better spot, right? So I think, so now it's February 15th. So we are doing an after repair value, right? What is the cost, or what's the value of this property after my rehab is completed? You're going to look at other completed rehabs in the in the same similar area, which in Baltimore might mean within a 3-block radius. In other cities and places, it might be a mile, but here it might be how far can you throw this rock? So you're gonna look at completed houses, houses that were sold, typically within the last 6 months. Now it's February now, so if you take it back 6 months, you're in what? December, November, October, September, October, November, December, January, February. So you're in like September. So in September, interest rates were kind of getting to its height. We've come down a little bit at this point. 6 months, you should be okay, right? A couple months ago, I think I've been a little bit more concerned about it. But within the last 6 months, you're not terribly off. But if you think you're high, underestimate, right? Give yourself a like 10% cushion or so if you need to. But 6 months, you should probably be okay because that's winter where the market naturally slows up. And we hit about the height of interest rates, I believe in September, October timeframes anyway. Do you have a payment plan for Next Gen program? Absolutely. And not only that, there's a payment plan, but there's also where you can spread it over a couple months. And then there's another, we actually partner with a company called Affirm where you can spread it over a year or two as well. So there's a few different options for payment plans. I got pre-approved for $185,000 to buy a house. Should I buy in Baltimore? What are your goals and what are you trying to accomplish? If you are, like what are you looking to do? If you're looking long-term, absolutely. If you are, super conservative and you have a family and you're living in the property and you want a grass with a fence and all that kind of stuff, like maybe not, right? So you want to, my thing, you're always going to get from me, what are your goals and what you're looking to do and accomplish? Because one size doesn't always fit all. And there's, certain like areas and neighborhoods sometimes that I'll share with folks if I know and understand what they're trying to do. But yeah, would I use $85,000 to buy a house in Baltimore? Sure. Okay. Great information, but it sounds like the 30 cap may not be enough to complete a total rehab. Maybe I missed what your question was, but I don't know. What's the best zip codes for multifamily and single family in Baltimore? Baltimore, the first thing you need to know is if you talk about zip codes as far as where to invest, your range is too wide. There are 242 neighborhoods in Baltimore, and they cross zip code lines. Baltimore is block to block. Zip codes are very, very large here. You can have a lot of different stuff in one zip code. So the first and foremost, I want you to get away from zip codes and into neighborhoods. Now, I'm still going to answer your question, right? So multifamily neighborhoods. I'm doing this once, so y'all better write it down. Multifamily neighborhoods. Hollins Market, Forest Park, parts of Park Heights, Gwen Oak, which kind of crossing up to the county a little bit, Ashburton, we have Reservoir Hill, Bolton Hill. There's a bunch of them. There's some like Parkville. There's neighborhoods across the city with multi. How's the average individual compete with hedge funds and larger investors? I don't want to own a block, just one or two. Seems like it's more difficult to get in. So yes, there are hedge funds here who are buying up stuff for sure. But you don't necessarily need to compete with them, right? Like that's the thing is although they're here, there's plenty of inventory. There's 15,000. So this reminds me that 14,466 or whatever the number was for properties with vacant building notices. Not every vacant property has a notice. So there is estimations that if you take that into account and in addition to that lots and stuff like that, like the number is like double, right? So there's no lack of opportunity. And hedge funds tend to be looking for a certain type of property. So don't feel like one, you have to compete with them, or two, them being here means that you can't be. There's room for everybody. Next Gen has contractors that can complete FHA 203Ks. Sometimes I can pull some favors. My construction company is not doing 203Ks right now, which would be helpful for a lot of folks, I think, if it was. But I'm not trying to front the stuff right now, right? So it really does depend. Folks that used to do it aren't right now. So there are some contractors that folks within NextGen have used for 203Ks for sure. And folks within the group are sharing their resources amongst each other. But it can be a challenge. The hack, though, is asking your 203K consultant for recommendations. So they'll share contractors that they tend to work with. And then you get a situation where folks are comfortable working together and hopefully things move a little bit smoother as a result. Okay. When you bought the block, did you use capital or take out a loan? We did both. We had a mixture. So our capital stack not only had our money, obviously, we had a loan and we also had tax credits. What real estate advice do you have for a young single female beginning their real estate journey? I would say if you're able and willing, I would buy a multifamily property. I would live in one unit and rent out the others. I would house hack and position myself to do that short term. And then once I stabilized or decide I was ready to do something different after the year that's typically required, I would buy something else. And then use the income from that original property, that house hack, to help with my debt to income ratio to afford to buy another one. Oh, see, y'all, I said I was only gonna say it once. So can you repeat the multifamily neighborhoods? Drop in the chat with the 4 that you got, and I'll tell you what you're missing. Quick tips on red flags for contractors. If your gut says it ain't right, it might not be, right? So if you're scheduled to meet them at the property at 11 o'clock and they don't show up to 1 o'clock, if they can't show up on time for your meeting, what makes you think they're gonna be on time for completing your project? If you're looking for contractors, quick tips. Go to where contractors should be. Go to Lowe's or Home Depot when it first opens and see who's there ready to run through the door like it's Black Friday. You want the contractors who are getting ready for the day so they can show up on site on time. Do you also have a property management company? I used to. I'm thinking about building that back up again. Any plans to, I almost joined, but I want someone to literally hold my hand, like have a person appointed to me, help me identify a property that fits my needs and walk me through everything. Are you open to doing something like that? Do you know how expensive that would be for me to do that? And this isn't even me being like, you know what I mean, trying to be funny, but like, I don't know that people, you know what I mean? Like, do you know how expensive it would be for someone to pay me to do that? It would be high as all get out. Okay? High. So no, I don't plan on offering services like that because the people I'm trying to help probably can't afford it. No shade. No shade. And I'm able to make a bigger impact by spreading the wealth a little bit. But also the other thing that I've learned after doing this for a really long time, although folks feel like they need that one-on-one personalized attention, you probably don't. And the way we have NextGen set up is everyone's typically investing in something similar. They're all doing stuff in Baltimore. So questions that one person has doesn't, other folks tend to have as well. It said take a cut. But see, I can use that same time I take to walk like an individual around. I use the same time and do it for myself and get 100%. So I've thought about it. Like I might do it just like to be nice, but with people in NextGen, I've thought about that, partnering on a project and maybe picking 2 or 3 people and joining on our project and do that. But I would start within NextGen. I probably wouldn't do it with someone random. No shade. Does that sound bad? Am I sounding like crazy? I'm not trying to sound crazy. It's just the cost of time is kind of crazy. And because of that cost of time, right? How do I then prioritize what I'm doing? Because if I'm saying I'm all in on you and with you on your project, but I'm only getting a smaller cut, I'm taking time for something I'm getting 100% of, it's hard to prioritize. I have too many different things going on. So I'm just being transparent. I'm just being honest. Yeah. Okay. See, thank you. I was confused by what that 30 cap thing. So if you're doing a 2 or 3K loan and they're saying you only have $30,000 to use towards renovation, it's because of how much your property is going to be worth after rehab. So it means that that property shouldn't need, if it needs more than $30,000 worth of rehab, then you're paying too much, right? You're paying too much. But there is no cap on renovation costs. You can 203K a house that you bought for $50,000. You need to put $150,000 into it. But that $180,000 can't be more than, I believe, 110% of that after repair value. Yeah, no shade, I understand, but maybe advanced members of NextGen. So I have done masterminds within NextGen where it's a smaller group, like 4 or 5 people. They see me more, they hear from me more, they have my phone number more. I've gone to their properties, stuff like that. But even still, right, they have access to me to take action. I'm not there taking action for them, because my goal is that folks don't need me to move, right? They're here, that they are able to go off on their own and be able to build on their own after they're done with me. Although sometimes I'm like, dang, like you don't even hit me up no more. It's been great. I have tons of folks who go off and they're on their own. They buy stuff themselves, and that's really the goal. Forest Park, Reservoir Hill, Parkville, Bolton Hill, Hollins Market was the other one I think you missed. Thank you. Perfect. Okay. Thanks, guys. At what point, if any, do you foresee Baltimore City taking action to reform its real estate tax rate? That's a conversation right now as well. The tax rate being 2.46%. I think the reason why it's high is because there's so much vacancy. But if there's all this vacancy that's being eradicated, can the tax rate come down? How does all that stuff balance? They've also talked about what it looks like to leave vacant house property tax for vacant houses higher and maybe lower it for owner occupied. All those types of conversations I've heard behind closed doors. Yep, yeah, 35 cap for limited to a 3K. Sorry, I'm like trying to keep up with the chat, but safe neighborhoods to buy a house in Baltimore under 185,000. Come on, specific questions. Hold on, let me make sure I'm not missing anything over here. Yeah, but also the person who's talking about like one-on-one support, just DM me so I can see what you're actually talking about. But know that I'm probably going to tell you need to just join NextGen. Safe neighborhoods to buy a house in Baltimore under 185,000. Just want a single family house in an area that feels somewhat safe. Thank you so much, by the way. Top of the head, like off the top of the dome, I would say like the Forest Park, Ashburton, and this might hit, you might be in like the 200,000s. But just like in general, I like the northwestern Baltimore. Northeast is cool too, but I just like Northwest Baltimore. So like the Forest Park, the Ashburtons, those types of neighborhoods, those will also give you like the yards, right? Instead of row homes, they're properties with single family detached housing. There are even parts between like a Forest Park and like proper Park Heights that have a lot of great, large, beautiful homes with yards in those areas. Yeah. So many important things to take note of. Can you please say this live? Yeah, so I'm also live on YouTube, so you can go to our YouTube at any time and watch this after this is up, which is coming up real soon because I gotta go get Michaela. I love to get in with some masterminds. Yeah, our masterminds are dope. And we also we did last year a mastermind at like a mansion, did like the whole thing, like let's live in your future self mastermind. That's always great as well. In addition to having that small group mastermind feel where you have your boardroom, people support you, cheer you on, and then Chloe and I as well, pushing folks forward. Bought my first home in September 22 in the Oliver area. Should I focus on getting another rehab property to rent out and put a little work into it, or simply live in my home for 5 years and rent it out? In the Oliver area, there's a lot of development happening, coming all around there. So Oliver, you have to the, I guess, south of there, Johnson Square, which is going to be a huge development over the next 5 years or so. You have development happening coming in Broadway East, and then you have the EBDI area where new construction projects are, and the projects specifically that we're doing in EBDI. So Oliver has had its challenges, but definitely over the next couple of years or so, I'm sure we'll see some growth. So if you're willing to live in it, go for it. If you want to renovate it and rent it out, that's okay too. Just make sure you know like what block you're on as far as what the returns can be. Okay. Yep, Union Square for sure. How's the rooming house market? To have a rooming house, to have more than 4 unrelated people under one roof, you need a rooming house certificate, which requires your use and occupancy certificate to say that you are a rooming house. So just know and understand the code. Just because a wholesaler says it's a rooming house does not mean it's legal. You are so very welcome. Yep, Franklin Square for sure. Thank you. Other options outside of house hacking when just starting. Outside of house hacking, what I don't typically tell folks that they should do a knock down, tear out row home for their first one, 150, $200,000 rehab, all that kind of stuff. So even getting something a little bit turnkey, if you can afford it, something that is cosmetic to get your feet wet isn't a bad idea starting out. Yes, they surely are block to block in Oliver, that whole kind of region. As an investor, which area will you say are the best 3 areas for our ROI? Over what time period? And ROI in what way? Like, I don't mean to make everything like complicated, but also the answer isn't always cut and dry. We have been very, very active in East Baltimore for the last 4 years, but are being actively pulled into West Baltimore. There's tons of opportunity in West Baltimore, tons. But I think East Baltimore, with the benefit of Johns Hopkins, is a lot faster than parts of West Baltimore. East Baltimore Midway. The East Baltimore Midway is very block to block, but has a lot of large developments that are happening and coming that will impact Midway. So just know where you are and what's happening. Appreciate the free game, of course. Just imagine the game that folks getting tonight. Next gen, I know there's a bunch of next geners in here tonight. We have a Wednesday session. Y'all know when I'm fired up, we finna be fired up. So just know and understand it's going down tonight during our Wednesday session tonight. It's fully renovated. I had the Oliver question. I bought the investor's first completed property. Thanks for your insight. Oh, got it. Move into it. No shade, but there's a good chance that you paid. If you bought a fully renovated property, the rental income on a single family house may not cover your costs. So I will move in for a while. Based on a full rehab projects in the next few months. As an investor, oh, so like a flip. What are the best 3 areas to flip in the next 3 months? Y'all be having some wild stuff. The best 3 areas to flip right now. I would say, so what you want to do is you want to follow the money. Follow the money. Try to follow the money in the chat. Follow the money. If you've been around, I say this all the time. You want to follow the money. So you want to be very clear on where money's already being spent. And because you're looking to do it now, you need to see evidence of that money being spent, right? You want to see development happening. You want cranes, you want whatever. You want contractors out every day. You want to see money actively being spent because you need to follow somebody else's money, right? So that may mean that you're looking at areas that already, development started last year, the year before, and they're still underway, but maybe not completely finished, or there's still some vacants around, and you're picking little spots and opportunities around it. I'm gonna actually really give you game because I'm feeling generous, right? So, for example, there is a project in East Baltimore in the EBDI footprint near Henderson Hopkins School. And there are projects that have been developed by investors already. There's still things going on and coming. And there are some vacant properties just sprinkled around. You want to look for sprinkles, right? If you're looking to get the highest ROI, you're trying to get in and out, all that kind of stuff. You want sprinkle blocks. You don't want blighted, right? You don't want to be in an area where there's nothing else there. Because what are you trying to do? You don't have time to create the market. You need to go where the market has already been created. So those types of opportunities. So going and looking at different developments across the city. I don't care if that's mine, right? I don't care if that's other developers. I don't care if that means builders like Ryan Holmes or D.R. Horton or whoever it is. Where are they spending big money? And then where can you find those sprinkles? Okay. Yes. Sign up. So I'm just about to sign up. Yeah, go for it. The link to join is in our bio on Instagram. You can go to gocharmcitybuyers.com/training. Okay. Yep, I'm dropping in the chat. And it's also in the description. Okay. We're going to purchase already tenant occupied or Section 8 properties. Do you advise to do this in Baltimore? Just make sure that there are no vacant building notices. Make sure that you chat with the tenant if you can. And there's a lot of other projects, voucher programs outside of Section 8. Just be aware of that. So if it's a Section 8 like project, make sure that you understand how long that tenant is on that program, because a lot of those sunset. So they're for shorter periods of time sometimes. But yeah, you can buy a property that's tenant occupied. Just make sure that there's a UNO, make sure that there is a rental license, make sure it's been gone through the rental inspection process. Make sure if you don't know the words that I'm saying or what they mean, that you're joining Next Gen. Because that's how people get jammed up. All right. Awesome. Okay. So it's been forever since I've done one of these. I wanted to go through the market stats. I'm going to talk about some things that are happening, give folks an opportunity to chat and ask questions. I had a lot of energy today before going into our Next Gen Accelerator Wednesday session that we have every single Wednesday with me tonight. I hope that this has been helpful to you. I will try to keep an eye on some comments afterwards for those of you who are watching the replay. I also want to recommend those of you who are investing in properties, have investment properties, or buying investment properties, make sure your properties are properly insured. So I'm really excited that we have formed a partnership with a really great insurance company who has that was built by an investor for investors to make sure that folks have a streamlined way to get and manage their insurance. And so Steadily Insurance is one of our partners. Go to our link in our bio on Instagram or the description under this video just to get a free quote. Check it out. Go put your address in. You get quote estimates really, really quickly. They respond super fast. And there's been way too many instances where people had vacant properties and weren't insured, or had investment properties and they weren't properly insured. And so we want to make sure you guys are taking care of your investments, because you can't build wealth if you're risking it all the doggone time. So as a Steadily partner, I want to make sure you guys go and click the link in the description on YouTube or the link in our bio and just get a quote for your insurance and make sure that not only are you covered, but you are protecting your investment and not overpaying. Awesome. All right. So I hope you guys have a wonderful night. And if you're Next Gen, we'll talk tonight. And if you're not, hope to talk to you soon. Bye.